There's nothing more relevant. Knowledge of who Jesus is, you might say, is a fundamental knowledge. Trying to work at thinking deep thoughts about Jesus is a privilege for us. When you think about Jesus, you feel like you're doing what you were made to do. It's good for us. And it's not just good for us because he's fascinating and unique and beautiful, though that would be enough, but also because thinking those deep, true, biblical thoughts about Jesus is practical. There's nothing more relevant. Knowledge of who Jesus is, you might say, is a fundamental knowledge. That's how one old Puritan put it. It's fundamental to all our spiritual growth. It's fundamental to doing the things God wants us to do day in and day out, to experiencing any kind of joy and to our eternal happiness. Which is why so often you'll find New Testament writers talking about all these very deep and mysterious truths regarding the person of Jesus right as they're in the middle of talking about something that's very specific and down to earth about how a Christian should live his life. So it's not just theoretical to them. And it's actually a kind of funny thing about how the Bible works out this doctrine, and a lot of them are like this, but this one for sure, because it's a mystery, the person of Jesus. It is a high-level truth, understanding who Jesus is correctly, because he's so unique. It's mind-blowing. I mean, you could have a doctoral seminar on this and come out feeling like you only touched the edge of it, because there are all these different things to think about and get right. And yet, even though it's so big like that, when the Bible talks about it, most of the time it just assumes it, like this is the way it is. And then it goes on to use that doctrine and apply it. And the application is usually more straightforward, actually. It's not so hard to understand. And I don't know, that may be because the doctrine, the truth about who Christ is, was just so obvious to them. Like, I don't need to prove the sun is in the sky. I just need to point. But while it might have been obvious to them, the truth is it's not always as obvious to us all these years later. Before we get into the practical parts, we have to come back and make sure that we understand the doctrinal part correctly. Because if we're not careful, we can assume a lot of things about Jesus as we're reading that are actually not quite accurate.